right. Welcome everyone to the August 21st, 2024 regular meeting of the San Francisco Elections Commission. I'm the president, Robin Stone. The time is now 6:03 p.m. and I call the meeting to order. Before we proceed further, I would like to ask Commission Secretary Marisa Davis to briefly explain some procedures for participating in today's meeting. After. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, President Stone. The minutes of this meeting will reflect that this meeting is being held in person at City Hall, room 408, 1 Dr. Carlton B. Goodlett Place, San Francisco, California 94102, and remotely via WebEx. As authorized by the Election Commission's February 15, 2023 vote, members of the public may attend the meeting to observe and provide public comment either at the physical meeting location or remotely. Details and instructions for participating remotely are listed on the Commission's website and on today's meeting agenda. Public comment will be available on each item on this agenda. Each member of the public will be allowed 3 minutes to speak, 6 minutes if you are on the line with an interpreter. When providing public comment, you are encouraged to state your name clearly. Once your 3 minutes have expired, staff will thank you and you will be muted. Please direct your comments to the entire commission and not to a specific commissioner. When joining by phone, you will hear a beep when you are connected to the meeting. You will be automatically muted and in listening mode only. To make a public comment, dial *3 to raise your hand when your item of interest comes up. You will be added to the public comment line. You will hear, "You have raised your hand to ask a question. Please wait until the host calls on you." The line will be silent as you wait your turn to speak. If at any time you change your mind and wish to withdraw yourself from the public comment line, press 3 again. You will hear the system say, "You have lowered your hand." When joining by WebEx or a web browser, make sure the participant's side panel is showing. At the bottom of the list attendees is a small button or icon that looks like a hand. Press the hand icon to raise your hand. You will be unmuted when it is time for you to comment. When you are done with your comment, click the hand icon again to lower your hand. In addition to participating in real time, interested persons are encouraged to participate in this meeting by submitting public comment in writing by 12 p.m. on the day of the meeting to elections.commission@sfgov.org. It will be shared with the commission after this meeting has concluded and will be included as part of the official meeting file. Thank you, President Stone.
Thank you, Secretary Davis. Will you please proceed with item 1, commission roll call?
President Stone.
Present.
Vice President Parker.
Here.
Commissioner Bernholz.
Here.
Commissioner Dye.
Here.
Commissioner LaVolsi.
Here.
Commissioner Wong.
Here.
Thank you. You have all participants attending.
Thank you. Secretary Davis. Okay. The San Francisco Elections Commission acknowledges that we are on the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone, who are the original inhabitants of the San Francisco Peninsula. As the indigenous stewards of this land and in accordance with their traditions, the Ramaytush Ohlone have never ceded, lost, nor forgotten their responsibilities as caretakers of this place, as well as for all peoples who reside in their traditional territory. As guests, we recognize that we benefit from living and working on their traditional homeland. We wish to pay our respects by acknowledging the ancestors and relatives of the Ramaytush community and affirming their sovereign rights as First Peoples. That closes agenda item number 1. We'll move to agenda item number 2, general public comment. Public comment on any issue within the Elections Commission's general jurisdiction that is not covered by another item on this agenda.
I have a call in.
Can everyone hear?
Yeah, hold on just a moment. I want to set my timer and then you can begin your comment. Timer.
Did you start it?
Yes, go ahead and start.
Hello, commissioners. For the record, my name is Chris Drdonic. I served on the Elections Commission for 10 years until this past February, and I'm now speaking as a member of the public. I hope all of you are doing well. I wanted to make a comment about an email I sent all of you yesterday in case you haven't had a chance to read it yet, and also so the public can know. You may remember that last fall during our September meeting, I showed a demo of an open source ranked choice voting results report I wrote that supports multiple languages and accessibility for people with visual impairments. It also does things like let the department display the final round RCV vote totals from the Dominion system directly on the department's election results summary page alongside the first choice totals, instead of only the first choice totals. One of the things I mentioned back then was that the results reporter also opens up the possibility for tooltips on the pages. That means that when you hover your mouse cursor over certain terms that might be unfamiliar to people, like exhausted ballots or continuing ballots, it would show an explanation of the term. There seemed to be a lot of excitement around that possibility, and I told you back then that I would implement it in the future. I did recently do that, and the purpose of my email was to let you know. My email included some screenshots of what it looks like, and also a link to an online demo where anyone can try it out. It happens to be the same link as I used last fall. I also sent an email to Director Arntz last Tuesday, a week ago, to let him know about the update. I don't know where his staff is in the process of integrating the reporter into their system for this November, but I also offered him to help in case there's anything I can do between now and the election to make the integration process easier for them. That can include things like making further changes to the code or just answering questions. Thank you very much, and it's great to hear and see all of you again, at least on a video.
Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Hold on one moment while I set the timer.
Shall I begin?
Just one moment. Thank
Yes, you may begin.
Okay. Hello, my name is Eric Roshan-Eisner. I'm a San Francisco voter, and I was calling in briefly about the same topic as Chris. I've seen his demo, and I think it's a great improvement over pretty much any RCV result system I've seen. I really think that we should, the commission should work with its staff to see that it's implemented before the November election. I think it would clarify a lot of confusion points that I've seen about RCV results from people that I know. Yeah, so I endorse it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay. Let me see if there's any other callers. There are no other callers.
Thank you, Secretary Davis. That closes agenda item number 2. We will move to agenda item number 3, approval of previous meeting minutes. Discussion and possible action on previous Elections Commission meeting minutes. Commissioner Dye.
Yes, I had sent around some minor corrections for the last 3 meeting minutes. The only thing that might be somewhat more substantive, most of them were typos, formatting changes, et cetera, and missing words, was just to clarify Director Arntz's comments about the kinds of election misinformation that the department is able to respond to, which is related to election operations. And he clarified that the department does not regulate campaign speech. I thought that'd be a clear way to state it. And then I just added, because I had written down a note that Commissioner LaVolsi had asked about the racial equity report. And so I just added a sentence on that. And then other than that, I think our new DCA might have attended our July meeting too. Is that right? Yeah, so,
As a member of the public.
oh, as a member of the
Yeah.
public, okay. And then that was in the May minutes. And then let me just double check and see if there's anything else I should bring to everyone's attention. I think everything else were just typos. And oh yeah, and then the July one, I just added a sentence that President Stone had mentioned that Commission Secretary Davis's review would be in October under other agenda items for future meetings.
Thank you, Commissioner Dye. Vice President Parker.
I had a couple of quick minor things, and I didn't have a chance to review the corrections that Commissioner Dye submitted, but on the May minutes, I wasn't at that meeting, but I did notice a typo in the second sentence of number 4 under the director's report. I am not sure what it was supposed to say, but I think there was a typo there. And in the July minutes, to my recollection and per my notes, I don't think in the future agenda items, I don't think that that was an accurate section, because I think the discussion about the director's evaluation actually happened in that meeting, so it wouldn't have been an August agenda item. So I think it was just an incorrect summary of what was hoped for in the August meeting.
Thank you. Great catch. On both commissioners. Thank you. Is there general consensus that we can adopt and approve the feedback from Vice President Parker and Commissioner Dye? Great. We will incorporate that feedback and add them to the respective meeting pages. Let's move to public comment.
There are no hands raised.
Thank you, Secretary Davis. That closes agenda item number 3. We'll move to agenda item number 4, Director's Report, discussion and possible action regarding the August 2024 Director's Report. I'll hand it to Director Arntz.
Thank you, President Stone. So also attached to the Director's Report is the memo that I provide to the commission before each election, seeking a waiver on the prohibition of city employees assisting the Department of Elections to conduct the election. And that has to be moved to September because we need to have a separate agenda item for that. I thought I could put that under my Director's Report. And then with that said, also for the September meeting, I'll include the alternative security plan, which the department must provide to the commission whenever the incumbent sheriff appears on the ballot. Then also I'll provide the election plan for the November election and the September commission meeting. Then I can take questions on the report, but at this point we received all the content for the ballot and for the voter information pamphlet. And so that's been where a lot of our focus has been for the past 2 weeks or so. One item that the commission has entertained previously is the listing of supporters and opponents on the local ballot measures. So the local ballot measures will include the supporters and opponents. And there's no need to opt out because we'll go beyond 6 cards. In fact, we'll likely not exceed 5 cards for this election, so which is really good. And the reason we'll have less cards than was feared going into the election cycle was just the number of local measures was far less than what was sort of moving through the process earlier in the year at the board level. And from there, I can kind of take any questions on my report. So,
Thank you, Director Arntz. We'll open to commissioners. Yes, Vice President Parker, and then Commissioner Bernholz.
Thanks as always for a really comprehensive report and for the visibility into what you all are doing to prepare for the election. What it looks like, I think it's really good for the public to see that. Just a couple of comments and a question. I was interested to read about the change in the ballot receipts. And I was just curious, is this common, moving away from the tear off to the full page, is that common in other, excuse me, common in other jurisdictions, or was this a department innovation, or just, I mean, it seems great, it's giving you more space. I was just curious where that idea came from.
It's our innovation, I think.
Wonderful.
So where that, good eye, actually. So where this came from was us trying to find a way to keep the card count lower with the extra space given to the supporters and opponents on the ballots. And one of the items that takes up space on the ballots are the stubs.
Yeah.
And so if we could remove at least one of the two stubs, then we would gain that space for content on the ballot. And this is where this card is, this extra piece of paper is coming into play. And then once we had the extra piece of paper, that would be essentially divide. Then we thought we could make it a divider, so the porkers give out the right number of cards to the voters. Then also we've got a potential space for advertisement. So it just all stemmed from us trying to react to not going beyond 6 cards to have this extra sheet available to us.
Well, congratulations.
No,
That's great. I'm, happy to hear all that. And I wondered, so thank you for telling us more about that. I was glad, of course, to read about the mailer going about RCV. That's something that I've been wondering, concerned about. So I'm glad there'll be extra communication about that on all those outreach packets that you'll be sending to organizations. And another question regarding AB 3184. I did a little bit of reading, some of the articles and coverage, and just going to Member Berman's site to try to understand the measure a little bit. What are the implications on the department's work and resources timelines if this passes? It looks like it's moving that direction, but what do you know the implications?
We have to keep the election open longer, probably. So we can't certify. We always try to certify by Thanksgiving, because once you come out of Thanksgiving, it's really hard to focus on an election. So, and then this year too, Thanksgiving is towards the end of the month. There's a longer space between election day and the Thanksgiving holiday than previous elections, for most elections. So we can't close down, we can't certify the election, we have to keep it open. That means we have to maintain the sheriff's deputies providing security for the election at the warehouse. We can't package the election. We can't archive the material as yet. We have to make sure that we're able to process ballots from any cured ballots that we receive. And then it also extends potentially any time for a recount. So if we were to certify the election, let's say on the Wednesday prior to Thanksgiving, then like the Wednesday, Thursday, the following week would be the deadline to request a recount. Now, if we have to go until December 3rd or 4th, where the date is in that legislation, we would certify at that point, and then it's December 9th potentially is the last day to request a recount. So we could potentially go into Christmas, or that Christmas holiday for the recount season if there's a request for recount. So it just pushes everything back, and then it just kind of, instead of trying to use the holidays as a point to take an end point to an election to open up the next process, meaning the recount requests time, which probably doesn't usually occur. It's not usually a recount request. So instead of being done by the mid to late November, the election continues and the costs continue.
So does that then perhaps have budget implications if
Oh,
they're
yeah.
saying that? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, I was thinking about this also in relation to, the report after the primary election, when the department does so much to cure the ballots already. And so this is really extending the timeline, but the process, you all already do a lot to cure the ballots. Right? Is there anything else that would change? It's really just extending the time for people to be able to submit their signature.
Yeah, and I think that San Francisco does probably has one of the highest standards when it comes to curing ballots in the state. So I don't think this legislation the impact isn't in San Francisco other than the extended time frame. We are also seeking to, I think it might have been my last report, I can't remember now, where we can have people cure their ballots using their phones and send it back to us. So that would even create more accessibility for curing ballots if there's a signature related issue on a return vote by mail ballot.
Okay. Thank you. And then the last thing I wanted to ask you about, again, after the primary election, we discussed communication with the media and other ways to set and manage expectations for results reporting and making sure they're not reporting that it's done, right? Like the day after the election. And in following the news, over recent weeks, my sense is that there could be several local elections that are very, very close, perhaps coming in with dozens of votes different. And so, and obviously this has happened in past elections. And so just has me thinking that I know that you're doing a lot. We've already discussed doing a lot proactively there, but it feels extra important watching all of that kind of play out around us to really lean into managing expectations about how long the ballot counts will take and when results will be final. And also I'm wondering if with all of that and this being, I mean, it's a presidential election, so turnout will be high. Again, watching, I'm thinking probably the turnout will be really high in this election. Is that affecting how you're thinking about temporary staff hires and making sure that you all can process all of the ballots, given how high it's likely to be in a turnout?
Yes to the latter for hiring temporary needed personnel, no to the former. So we're not seeking to increase staffing levels so that people don't have concerns about the time frame to count ballots. We will increase the number of temporary needed personnel so that we can accommodate the volume of ballots that we'll receive, and so we can move through them in a timely manner. But we're also we can't rush through the process of it. It just takes time to move through everything. So we want to make sure that the public, the San Franciscans, has the final results in a timely manner. But we're not running scared because people might think it's taking too long to count the ballots. I mean, it's just, we've gone through this before. This is not something that's new. When time comes, going into this cycle, we'll have information. We'll make pronouncements. We'll talk to the press about the length of the counting. And then as we go through the cycle, it'll continue, and it'll continue until we certify the election. But the main thing is that we have the staffing to move through the processing in a timely manner, and they would do it effectively. And it's not as much speed as it is to making sure that everything that can be counted is counted, and we do the process correctly.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you, Vice President Parker. Commissioner Bernholz?
Thank you, President Stone. Hi, Director Arntz. A couple of questions, and picking up on the conversation you were just having. Can you say a little bit more about how people would cure their signatures by phone?
So the vendor that provides the remote accessible vote by mail ballot also has an application that we can send to voters who have who can cure their ballot, have a challenge to their ballot based on a signature related issue. And so we can send, instead of someone using the form as a download from our website and signing it and mailing it back to us, or scanning it as a PDF and emailing it back to us, they can open a signature space on their phone, use a stylus, use their finger, provide a signature sample, and then send that back to us.
Got it. Thank you. On the first item on your report, since they pulled the bond issue, does it still appear? It's just, I'm trying to figure out if it's 15 local measures minus the bond? Is it 15 with the bond? Does this mess up your alphabet? What happened when they pulled this the 2 days after you set this all up?
So it's 15 without the bond. The regional bond was, the designation was regional measure 4. So it's
Uh-huh.
not included in the random alpha that we drew last week. And the measure was withdrawn within the time frame allowed under state law. So it was something that, and it was something that was communicated to the counties. So we weren't totally surprised that the bond was withdrawn, and it happened in a time frame that had really no impact on our preparations.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. I was hoping you would say that. Going down to section 2, item F. I'm may just be reading this incorrectly, but is there, when you say that a significant increase in email correspondence from such voters, is that just a normal increase because the election's approaching, or is it a potentially significant increase because something else is happening?
I think the safest ground that I can cover is that due to this being a presidential election cycle, we're seeing an increase in interest in voters who are overseas. If there's a reason beyond that, I
Okay.
wouldn't venture there.
Okay, so just that's what I thought. And then you talked about the other question. And then my other question then has to do with the comment from former Commissioner Jordanic and the other member of the public. Can you fill us in a little bit on if the department has made any steps toward using the reporter tool and where you are in terms of that?
Yeah. So as I indicated, I think before the March election, even we intended to use the software, the code that former Commissioner Jordanic provided. We've already completed our part of the process. So for us to receive new code at this point is late in time. But we are going to use the code. We will have the reporter as part of our reporting website, and if we can have some of these informational tags appear on the site, we'll implement them. But yeah, we're using it, and it's already been developed with the information that we wanted to include in the reporter for this upcoming election.
Brilliant. That's great news. Thank you, Director Arntz. Those are all my questions.
All right.
Thank you, Commissioner Bernals. Commissioner Lavolsi.
Thank you, Commissioner, Thank you, President Stone, and thank you, Director Arntz. I was very excited to see in Section 3B, the Election Readiness Toolkit, and to see how easy it was to navigate. I did it on my phone, my iPad. It was very easy, and I was particularly encouraged to see the information available to people who are formerly incarcerated. And it's very clear language that explains to them what they need to do to register and what the eligibility is. So thank you, and I think this is really fantastic and something that we should be proud of and your office should be proud of. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lavolsi. Commissioner Dye.
Yes, Director Arntz, I really like that. I smiled when I saw the thing about the innovation about getting rid of the stub, because I've always wondered, why do I end up with a handful of stubs afterwards? So that's great. I had a little trouble picturing it. So it's being replaced by another entire sheet or a different regular size paper for the divider. I was trying to understand what the new receipt looks like. Because
Yeah, it'll essentially be another ballot card.
It will
that
be another ballot
separates the whatever number of cards we have per voter. In
Okay,
the box at the polling.
so you're not quite saving paper, but you're definitely saving the tear-offs,
Correct.
right?
Right.
But you got
So-
space,
So
so
we've gained space for the artwork.
perfect. So that means, I just want to make sure I heard you correctly. So that means all of the measures will have both the local and the state will have the supporters and the opponents in the
Correct.
ballot card. Perfect. Great. And then on 3884, just as a follow-up to Commissioner Parker's question, would you remind me what our current cure period has been? Because it was faster, right?
No, it's set by state law. It's 2 days prior to certification.
Okay. So but this is extending it then. So we used to certify faster, basically, right?
Correct. So we certify about 10 days prior to the full, up to 10 days prior to the full ballot processing period.
Okay. So because we were fast, got it. Couple other things. Have you set the date for the job fair for,
No.
is there anything that we can do to help get the word out? Once you do set the date.
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah, if you can send us a link, I'm sure we'd be happy to share on our social media and all that. Do you anticipate having any issue hiring seasonal workers, or do you have a good bench of folks who've done this before?
But what I'm seeing right now, I don't think so. Yeah.
Okay, great. And then I was wondering if you could give us a little color on the outreach events versus the actual registration. Because, just looking at the numbers, there doesn't seem to be an obvious correlation. The district with the highest number of registrations, which was SD5, had the fewest number of events and kind of vice versa. So any commentary on the relationship between the outreach events and the registrations?
No, it just depends on the event, the type of activities around the event. So no, I don't think you can draw a correlation to the number of events versus registrations.
Yeah, I mean, I recognize there's certain districts where it's just harder to register people. So even if you had a lot of events, it may not yield that many new registrations. Okay, great. And then I was wondering if, I was going to bring this up in my commissioner's report. I was wondering if you had any insight on what's going on with SB 1328, which was supposed to be just a cleanup bill for the elections code, but
I've not been tracking that, so I don't have any.
okay. So one of the concerns, and I'll talk about it a little bit more in my commissioner's report, but just in case you're not here, there is apparently discussion about banning all of the county registrars from publishing the cast vote record report. For at least 30 days, which is of course inconsistent with, San Francisco's been so transparent and we publish the ballot images and people can go look pretty, as soon as we can do it. So 30 days would really push it out there. So, any concerns about that? Because I don't know if you've heard anything about this.
I mean, I'd have to read the draft legislation, or I don't really have any comment at this point.
Okay. All right. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Was there any?
I will say more during my commissioner's report.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Commissioner Dye. Commissioner Wong. And I think I'm just having some trouble hearing folks because of the air conditioning. So if you all don't mind speaking a little bit, don't mean to be nitpicky. It's just very loud. So thank you, Commissioner Wong.
Thank you, President Stone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you. Appreciate that.
So it is really exciting to see the department's effort to start recruiting seasonal employees and poll workers. For both seasonal employees and poll workers, I'm just curious, are there any languages required the most support or currently lacking people signing up for volunteers or seasonal employees?
Well, we haven't hired into most of our positions yet, so I don't know if there's a need for more. On the poll worker side, I really don't think we're going to have any challenges with getting sufficient numbers of bilingual poll workers for November. Usually we get more than enough applications. So
That's great to
yeah.
hear. But yeah, I'm happy to share within my network too.
Sure.
There's a language accessibility collaborative, and there's people speaking all sort of languages. So happy to share once, you know, the job fair date is set. Under part 3, section B, I share the same sentiments that I'm really impressed by the elections toolkits. And available in 4 languages. I reviewed the Chinese and English version. The Chinese version looks really great. The translation was really clear, easily understandable. I really appreciate, I was using the tools too, like mapping out each person's voting plan. The RZV practice ballot is really helpful and interactive actually, because they explain kind of like what that means whenever you vote. So I am really impressed by like how interactive those tools are. And under section C, you mentioned delivering packets with tailored information for unhoused communities, SRO tenants, and hospitalized residents. I'm just curious, can you share a little bit more about this information tailored for this specific group of people?
It's mostly the same information that we send to the community organizations. What would be different or emphasized would be that to indicate, to inform people they don't have to have a permanent address, residential address to register, and also to provide examples of how they can receive their ballots, and also that they can go to any polling place to register and get a ballot and vote on election day or come to City Hall. So, but as far as the processes of registration, voting, the availability of the voter information pamphlet being online, that's the same. So.
Gotcha. Since this is my first elections, I wonder, like, so for unhoused folks, you said they don't need to, like, they don't have to have their ballot mailed to an address. How would they, kind of, are they going to come up to like City Hall and pick up their ballot?
Right. They
Yeah.
come to City Hall, or they can get a mail drop. So if they have a mailing address,
Gotcha.
so it's one common mailing address would be the post office.
Okay.
So there's a mail drop at the post office. We can send it there, and they can pick it up, for instance, or even at the SRO.
That's great. Thank you so much. And this is just, once again, just out of my curiosity. I know in the 2020 presidential elections, in order to boost voting access for SRO tenants in Chinatown, the department had a ballot drop-off station at Portsmouth Square to address some mailing issues also for SRO residents in Chinatown. And I'm just wondering if we are considering a similar approach this time.
No, we won't set up a separate drop-off station in Portsmouth Square. I think we've got a drop-off box in the area, though. I can't think of the location.
Okay.
But that was a different type of election due to the pandemic.
Okay.
So when we have the 37 boxes now throughout San Francisco, which we didn't have in 2020. And I can't remember the one that's near Chinatown, Portsmouth Square, but I know there's one down there that they could use.
I think that's one outside City College in Chinatown branch.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I saw that, but yeah, good to know. And one last question about the Assembly Bill AB 3184. Do you know the timeline for when the State Assembly might vote on this bill? Like, just to know.
No, I haven't looked at it since no, I don't know.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I have the same concerns that Commissioner Parker has. Just want to make sure, your department have enough time to be ready for it in case there's any changes. But it seems like you already have the plans, and it would just push back the timeline.
Exactly. Right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Wong. Okay, I have a few that were tangentially touched on through other commissioners. I wanted to extend my appreciation for touching on some of the specific areas that I know I've brought up a handful of times, one being unhoused voters who can vote. And I wanted to also add this for Commissioner Wong's reference, so they can, an additional piece to know about voting as someone who, let's say, doesn't have, who is unhoused. you also can use an intersection. So you don't just have to, you don't have to have a specific address, you can have an intersection. And so I appreciated the attention to that in this, and also specifically kind of expanding on the public services, like the utilization of public services to do that outreach. So thank you for that. And then also the addition of the overseas voters, which I think we had talked about. I don't even recall when that was, but I appreciate that being added in here as well. One piece that I wanted to add onto Commissioner Bernholz's question around that is, I assume that the context there is also that in that conversation you and I had about overseas voters, you had said that we actually have low participation rates of overseas, I believe, if I recall correctly, that we have relatively lower participation from overseas voters on average during election cycles. And so when I read this, I perceived that as there was a greater interest or demand for information from overseas voters compared with previous election cycles. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, that's exciting. That's great to hear. And also probably a testament to how easy and accessible resources are in the department to folks overseas. So glad to see that. And then I also was excited by the influx of poll workers, or the poll worker recruitment, that in how successful it has been. So that's really great. One question, or one additional piece that Vice President Parker had brought up was the concerns about the results reporting and the tabulation process. One idea that just came to mind, and it doesn't need to be, this is just an idea. So zero pressure. But I did see the press release of the partnership between the department and the Office for Civic Engagement and Immigrant Affairs, which I was also really excited about because I know we had talked about that before. And I wonder if at some point along the way, I don't know if there's a one-sheeter that you already have, or a specific resource that you could send to us. Wonder if there are specific talking points, or like I said, a one-sheeter that you could share with the commission and or with like that office who's already out there talking to voters all the time, talking to the electorate all the time, so that they can communicate the process of how results are counted. And so it puts less burden on perhaps the department, and maybe just, hey, in your conversations, maybe you can weave in these 3 points that results won't be reported on election night, that it might take X amount of time. Anyway, so it was through that partnership, perhaps there could be some talking points, and obviously through us, as opposed to maybe like some massive press conference, like that might be a more kind of bottom-up approach to getting the word out there. So just an idea. And then one question I had was around the poll site locations. I think I had read 17 or 18 have to change. And I just wanted to, there wasn't necessarily anything associated with that of whether that's been difficult or not. And so I just wanted to ask, let's see, what page was it on? I didn't unfortunately list what number it was, but around the poll site locations. I recall, is this ringing a bell to you at all?
Page 2,
Thank you.
2E.
Oh, yes, thank you. I appreciate that. The department needs to locate 17 new sites because of cancellations and relocate 18 sites. That's where I got the confusion. So I assume relocate means you already have identified where those would go. And identification of 17 new sites. I just wanted to ask how that's going. If you're having any trouble, are there ways in which we can support in finding those locations?
I think it's going well, and it's not a lot. It's a very small number of
Okay.
of
Yeah.
sites for us.
Yeah, of the 500
In between elections, I mean, often we have over 50,
Oh.
50, 60,
that
70.
have to change.
Yeah, or relocate, or people cancel in between elections, or now with elections and every other year, we're going to have a potentially a big drop off for June 2026. So this is a very low number.
That's helpful context. Cool.
But at the same time, you know, there's going to be a couple of spots that are going to be hard to find sites. So yeah, maybe I'll be contacting you.
Okay.
But yeah.
Well, let us know. No, that's helpful context. You know, I feel like even if I've lived through a few elections now as a commissioner, I sometimes don't remember these kind of context details. So I appreciate the perspective there. One other question I had is around, and I imagine, you know, we'll talk about this when the election plan comes up. One question I had was around coordination with law enforcement to protect the movement of ballots and poll sites and the warehouse. I imagine you all are already thinking about this and planning on it. So I just wanted to know if that kind of how that's going and any concerns you have or not.
Well, for an election like this, there's a lot of interest in supporting elections, and so when we contact or we're even being contacted by law enforcement regarding support for the elections process in San Francisco for November, and then also built into the charter, we have the sheriff's office responsible for election security and responsibility for the voted ballots, which is wonderful. It's really been a wonderful support since that change in 2002. So now, right now, as far as the level of support that we're receiving and will receive, I don't have concerns that any agency or any group that we request assistance won't step forward, because I think they will.
Oh, great. I meant, so all of that is great. I meant also just, yeah, I think all that makes sense. I think I am also cognizant of poll observers and how folks may or may not interact with poll workers. I don't believe we ever have, not ever, but very rarely do we have like the sheriffs on site at poll sites. So for intimidation, other forms of intimidation. And so I was also glad to see that you incorporated the de-escalation piece in there per previous elections, as we've talked about. And so just thinking ahead of what could come, because it will be as always, a tense election. So preparing for that in a coordinated way, not just the actual like movement of ballots, but also just rapid response planning as needed, was kind of the second part of what I was asking, which it seems like you're already thinking about, but.
We are.
Okay, great. One other question I had about Vice President Parker's comment regarding AB 3184 and the budget implications. Are you aware if there are any state appropriations tied to the bill, or is it going to be self-funded?
There's never money.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, there is, but they never actually, they
never comes our
rarely
way.
actually deliver the funds. Yeah.
So yeah, I even ignore that
Yeah.
part of
Okay.
the legislation when I see it, because
Yep.
it won't be funded.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. I think many jurisdictions are still waiting to get reimbursed from 2020 for moving to automatic vote by mail. Okay, I think that was it. And yeah, appreciate the director's report. Any other comments from commissioners or follow-ups before we move to public comment? Okay. Let's move to public comment.
Mr. Hill, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, you may begin.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to join the commission tonight and Director Arntz. My name is Stephen Hill, and was one of the original architects, if you will, of ranked choice voting in San Francisco. Director Arntz, I can't believe it's like 22 years later since we embarked on this journey. I hope you've enjoyed having your Decembers back all these many years. For those of you who don't know, San Francisco had December runoffs, which was Director Arntz and his team would be certifying elections in the middle of the holidays, and it was, I'm sure, quite a drag. So it's been great to see the continued involvement of the administration of ranked choice voting. I was calling in tonight to comment on encouraging Director Arntz to use the tool that former Commissioner Jordanik has come up with, and I was pleased to hear that he's already planning to do it. So again, congratulations on continuing to improve ranked choice voting elections. In Alameda County, a newly formed elections commission there is actually watching how this tool is going to perform, because there's interest in Alameda County to bring this tool because of the way it's multilingual, has more accessibility than the Dominion PDF reports that are HTML instead of PDF. Up until a few years ago, the Dominion reports used to be in HTML, and then they switched to PDF, and that actually caused some problems in Alameda County, where a blind advocacy group threatened a lawsuit over the PDFs. So it's great to go back to HTML, because I think it's going to cause fewer problems, and it's more public friendly. The showing of the final round vote totals and the summary page, these are all great improvements, and we look forward to seeing how it works in San Francisco, and them being able to take this to other cities. And you know, I've all these many years continued to point to San Francisco as really the gold standard in many ways for how to run ranked choice voting. So that's my congratulations to Director Arntz and the commission, those who are on it now and those who have served in the past. The thing that I would say is that there's always new voters every election. And so you have to continue to educate those voters about ranked choice voting, and to figure out new ways in the new environment where there aren't that many voters voting in precincts anymore. I mean, as Director Arntz will recall, there used to be a lot of extra training for poll workers. They were kind of the last line of defense, because they could help voters out if we didn't understand how to vote in ranked choice voting. But that tool is kind of disappearing. So you know, it's a little bit more challenging to figure out how to educate people when they're voting at home. And I know that the San Francisco, I believe, still does a mailing to people, but I encourage you to keep thinking of new ways as a commission to educate voters in these ways, because it's very important. We have at Fair Vote we had a project.
Mr. Hill, your time has expired.
Can I have 10 more seconds to just tell you one thing that I think you'll be pleased about? We had a project to go out to Chinese-speaking organizations with a Chinese fluent speaker to educate about ranked choice voting. So I encourage the commission and the department to continue that kind of outreach. It's incredibly important. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Put my mute. Perfect.
Okay, there are no other participants wishing to make a comment.
Thank you, Secretary Davis. That concludes agenda item number 4, Director's Report. We'll move to agenda item number 5, Commissioners' Reports. Discussion and possible action on Commissioners' Reports for topics not covered by another item on this agenda. Meetings with public officials, oversight and observation activities, long-range planning for commission activities and areas of study, proposed legislation which affects elections, and others. I will open the floor. Yes, Commissioner Dye.
Stone. Thank you, President Stone. Yeah, I wanted to just bring to the Commission's attention this SB 1328. As I mentioned, it was originally supposed to be just a cleanup of the elections code. It was very technical. Actually, Mr. Hill brought this to my attention, that there is some scuttlebutt about this idea of banning registrars from releasing the cast vote record report for 30 days. The thinking is that it came from Alameda, and the Secretary of State, backed it. It was not in Senator Bradford's original bill. It's already gone through a couple of committee hearings. So I had contacted President Stone and asked if she would send a letter to the Senator Bradford's legislative director and CC the Deputy Secretary of State, just to kind of ask what the status was and to kind of reassert, San Francisco's long history of transparency and the fact that we, release our ballot images and we try to do this very promptly, and that it would be a step backwards to make us hold that information for 30 days, just to find out where things are and perhaps to kind of nudge the legislation in the right direction so that we don't have to, come out against it, basically. So if it's okay with the rest of the commission, I was going to invite Mr. Hill to maybe add a little more color on it, since he's the one who brought it to our attention. If that's okay.
Mr. Hill is definitely entitled to give public comment. I think should he want to submit a letter or join as a potential guest speaker at our next meeting, although it seems like this is kind of timely, I would encourage him, we could discuss for sure. But I think ideally there'd be 3 minutes that he could offer.
Sure.
If that's okay.
Yeah.
But please continue, whatever.
Yeah, well, that's really all that I had. I was hoping Mr. Hill could add any more detail to kind of give the rest of the commission some context. And then, if we kind of agree, then we could ask President Stone to send a quick note off and, like I said, maybe do some nudging in the right direction. So Mr. Hill, if you have 3 minutes of comment to add to this, we would love to hear from you.
I think let's wait till we finish go through it as public comment, if that's okay.
Sure.
And then folks can also, sorry, it's so loud. Then folks can also share any reports they have as well. And I'll just add, if it's helpful with, as context on the communication with Commissioner Dye and myself, just to share a little bit of insight into why I had suggested that we postpone, or I postpone sending the letter. It was kind of there are a few things. So one, which I'm assuming Mr. Hill can also address in his very brief 3 minutes, is the notion that there haven't been actual draft changes at this point. And so until we have seen a change to the bill, I didn't feel that I thought that it was prudent to wait until those draft changes were actually material rather than kind of word of mouth, as particularly in our role as commissioners and the Commission of San Francisco, Elections Commission of San Francisco. Our role isn't necessarily to engage with state legislators, particularly not our state legislators, not our representatives, on potential inner workings of legislation in Sacramento. And so until we had something more material, I suggested we hold off. And that also, it kind of in that same vein, what our role is in the context of San Francisco and what our role isn't in the context of the state of California. And so just talking through those things, I didn't feel that it would have been appropriate for me, as in my current role as the acting president of the commission, to speak on in that with that title based on kind of where it was at this point, and thought that it would be better to understand where things stand, perhaps through Mr. Hill or others, and then have the commission discuss it democratically. And then the last piece of that is, should this amendment that advocates and Commissioner Dye have raised go into effect into the draft legislation, there is also a more formal process for us to go through in San Francisco, where we would basically work with a specific legislative committee that advocates on behalf of San Francisco to our representatives in Sacramento. So we would present to them what our position is. Likely Director Arntz would participate in that process. We would bring it forward to that committee, and then the committee works with the mayor's office to advocate on the city's behalf. So there is a more formal process should that legislation actually become more formalized as and the amendment be in that formalized bill. So I wanted to just add that context that there is a path to that that exists once something more material does happen. So wanted to share that, which I also shared. I don't know if I shared the legislative committee part to Commissioner Dye, but I did share the other pieces in my comments in our exchange out of the meeting. Vice President Parker.
Thanks for bringing this to our attention. Maybe this will be answered when we hear the public comment, but do you know what the intention, do we have any idea what the intention is behind extending the reporting date of this information to 30 days?
It's okay, Varshman?
Oh, yes, sorry.
Yeah.
Commissioner Dye.
We're not sure, and I think Mr. Hill can provide more color, but basically Alameda followed our example and put in an elections commission, and this new elections commission and the Alameda registrar are having some conflict. And the commission obviously is a body not unlike ours and is interested in transparency and all this other stuff, and they're getting some resistance from the registrar. So I think there's some political things going on behind the scenes to essentially try to avoid doing more work, would be my guess.
Can you, sorry, I couldn't hear the last part too. What was that last?
Avoid more work.
Okay, that's what I thought you said. Thank you. Floor is still yours, Vice President Parker.
Oh, that was it. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Dye. We can invite public comment. So we'll invite all public comment, including Mr. Hill. And then should we want to continue discussion after public comment, we can do that as well. Does that sound good? Okay, let's move to public comment.
Mr. Hill. Mr. Hill?
Thank you very much. Yeah, briefly, I had an email today from the legislative director of Senator Stephen Bradford's office, who's the legislative sponsor of this bill, and they sent the amendments that they are going to introduce. The bill currently has been through the Assembly. It's now been through the Senate. It's gotten through appropriations just a few days ago. So they're going to introduce these amendments now over the next few days. And then they'll have to have some sort of joint conference committee for both the Assembly and the Senate to pass it. The expectation is the bill is going to pass. So what I've been told and I haven't confirmed by looking through the amendments, because I just got them today, that the bill will not include this 30-day ban anymore. It just became too controversial and they need more time. But the Secretary of State's office has said that they are committed to taking a look at this. And it's not clear to me why they're going down this road. I had very good communications with the Deputy Secretary of State who's in charge of this bill. And, for months, there was no mention of this at all. And suddenly it was on the radar. But they have withdrawn this part, but they are going to come back to it. So what I would suggest to the commission is that you don't have to take an advocacy position on this. If you just send an inquiry to both the Deputy Secretary of State and Senator Bradford's office and say, we are inquiring because we already do this and we have heard that this is something that you are going to be looking at going forward. And we would like to be informed about and be involved in this discussion with you so that you understand what we've been doing and how it's been working successfully and how it could potentially be a model for unprecedented levels of transparency and accuracy and security and accountability of elections. And other counties may want to do this. We've tried to emphasize to the Secretary of State's office that this is an area where home rules should be respected, that each county should be allowed to have its own chart, its own path in this way, as long as it's keeping within law. And that they shouldn't try to put a top-down, one-size-fits-all rule for all counties in California, because every county in California, they're very different types of counties. LA County versus Shasta County, for example. So I think you have a role to play here to let them know, hey, we're watching, we're interested, this is what we're doing, and we want to be in dialogue with you. So we make sure that you are considering our needs as San Francisco County for how we should be able to conduct our policy around cast voter records, especially when it comes to ranked choice voting elections. If you don't know what happened in Alameda County, the Registrar of Voters office there made a terrible mistake by, they checked the wrong box in the Dominion system, which is the same system San Francisco has, and as a result, ran the elections incorrectly. And in one school board race, a very close race, it actually made a difference in the outcome. And they didn't know that they had made this mistake until after the election was certified. And once the election is certified, it takes a judge's order to reopen those ballots and recount them again. It led to 2 lawsuits, many months of headlines and scandal and all sorts of things. And it just was a terrible situation. And in Alameda County, if they had simply followed the policy that San Francisco has, the mistake would have been discovered within the first week of the elections and could have been fixed before the election was certified. So
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Thank you.
Yep, sure. Thank you for giving me some time to explain that. And I'd be happy to work with you if you want to have more information, or you start thinking about you're willing to write something involving the director and making sure he has appropriate input. I get all that. Happy to help in any way I can.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other public commenters?
Let me check again, Dr. Flowman. No.
Great. Thank you. Do commissioners have any other comments? Yes, Commissioner Dye.
Yes, well, I'm relieved to hear that it's not in the current bill. That takes the urgency away. But I agree with Mr. Hill. This is a situation we should watch. I mean, I think San Francisco's, ballot images, it's really unprecedented. And we're kind of a shining star for other counties to emulate. And it would be a shame if, we had to abandon this because of again, it's really unclear what the motivation is behind this. We can speculate, but given what Mr. Hill was explaining, it was a pretty embarrassing and costly situation for Alameda County. So the irony is, if they were committed to kind of transparency that San Francisco had, maybe they would have found it sooner. So that is part of our election security, and it's the fact that we have other eyes on things. So I think it's a good idea for us to send such a letter and just indicate our interest and educate a little bit about what we do in San Francisco and why we do it.
Thank you, Commissioner Dye. Yes, Vice President Parker.
I think that, if what Mr. Hill suggested, that there is a commitment from the Secretary of State's office to take a look at this, if that's a documented thing that they are truly doing, I don't think that it hurts for us to just send an inquiry. Again, I don't think that this is the point for advocacy necessarily. I think it's this is something we care about in our jurisdiction. It would affect us. We want to be informed. We are happy to speak with you, as sort of suggested in that way, in sort of a friendly, a friendly inquiry to to share that this is an important thing to us. And so we are happy to talk about it, but minimally would like to be kept aware of their progress. I think would be a good idea.
Thank you, Vice President Parker. I'll just jump in. I think I would, there's a couple things. So I'm glad to hear that that was scrapped, as we'd all hoped. I think the cast vote record is a very important transparency tool that we offer in San Francisco. I am also glad that we kind of waited a little bit just to see, though the potential that the Secretary of State, that Secretary Weber might be opening this back up, definitely, and maybe, or to look more deeply at this question. I would be interested to actually understand why. I think the why is still relevant. If there are security reasons that, there's always this balance, right, between security and transparency. It's this like ongoing friction. And from our point of view, of course, we want the transparency. But I would be interested to know why. If it is really about the kind of friction between the oversight body in Alameda that was implemented as a result of that catastrophe, for lack of a better word, if that's really the reason, or if it is, if they're doing a full policy analysis as to why, I'd be interested to understand that. I also think maintaining our focus on this being a San Francisco issue and not trying to advocate for change at the state level. So saying this is something San Francisco would want to retain, and it's important to us. I also think it's something we could discuss with the deputy city attorney. Should there be implications that we could opt out, which oftentimes we can. And so, what does that mean for a charter city? I think these are all considerations, and I am hesitant to put the cart before the horse and reach out to Secretary Weber until we have some of these questions answered. So if there is I have to imagine that this, unless I'm misunderstanding, that given that this would be no longer a piece of legislation that is moving forward in Sacramento, that it wouldn't be implemented with Secretary Weber before November, but correct me if I'm wrong. And so I don't know if there's an immediate urgency, although I could, of course, correct me if I'm wrong. But I think these are all questions that should be answered in addition to actually seeing material, any sort of specific material that shows that the secretary has said that she would like to evaluate this. So if there's a specific report that you, Commissioner Dye or Mr. Hill, can direct us to, I think that would also be helpful. I think going based on like verbal rumors is not in our best interest. So those are the things that are on top of mind. I'm not opposed to sending an inquiry, but I do think that there are broader considerations at play. And even still, my thought is there a concern with working through all of these questions before our next commission meeting? Is that enough time? Yeah, I think that is a question mark I have to get some of those things answered. So I think I'll punt that to Commissioner Dye, if you have some thoughts. Yes, Commissioner Dye.
Yeah, so I think we can get a copy of what the amendment that was proposed that got scrapped, so that at least we can see what they were talking about. So I think that would be helpful. My guess is that you're probably right, that they probably won't do this before the election, that we can kind of watch it. But I do think it would be useful to reach out to see if we can get the why, because I'm not sure we're going to get the why unless we ask the question. So, so I like Vice President Parker's suggestion of just doing a friendly inquiry and saying, we'd love to stay informed about this, that this is really important for San Francisco. It's worked very well for us. And, you know, we'd like to understand, you know, any state, you know, code that would potentially impact our ability to continue with our transparency policy, something to that effect.
Thank you, Commissioner Dye. Just to respond to that, I'm not opposed to the inquiry. I think there are just many considerations that I'm interested in, such as I definitely think the draft amendment, any reports that Secretary Weber has said that she, you know, Mr. Hill has communicated that. So it sounds like he has some background that he could potentially share with us. I'd also be interested to have the DCA participate in this conversation. And then the last piece being the timeliness of this, meaning once we have collected that information of the amendment, the reports of the secretary saying this, the timeliness of it, any implications gone through the DCA, then in our September meeting, discussing what an inquiry would look like. So it's more just, can we collect more facts before we submit an inquiry, is really my kind of alternative suggestion. Yes, Commissioner Dye.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to pull some stuff together. And maybe, you know, Commissioner Wong may not remember the debacle in Alameda, so we can pull some articles together on that, just so there's some background on that and the Alameda Elections Commission, and just so we have some context and color. But yeah, and then maybe we can make this an agenda item at the next meeting.
Great. I appreciate that. I think that will really help. And I agree, adding some background on what happened in Alameda would be really valuable for Commissioner Wong and for the public, so that folks can really understand the full scope of why we're bringing this up. So thank you for volunteering to pull those things together. And if there is, regardless, even if this could come before November, I have to imagine that September would be sufficient. So I will kind of work toward that as an item in September. Great. Thank you, Commissioner Dye. Any other commissioner reports or comments or questions about any of this? Okay, great. That closes agenda item number 5. We'll move to agenda item number 6, agenda items for future meetings, discussion and possible action regarding items for future agendas. So just a couple quick things. Obviously, we just discussed one agenda item. The other item that will go into the September meeting is the waiver that was agendized for this meeting. We will move that to the September meeting. And then one other thing I wanted to add about the September meeting due to scheduling conflicts. I have heard from most, though not all, I think I've heard from a quorum. So hopefully the other folks can join as well. But we are going to push the September meeting to the 24th. So September 24th at 5:30 p.m. I know this is a little inconvenient, but I wanted to confirm with folks who hadn't had the chance to, what did I get wrong?
No, just to remind you.
Yes, I will do that. Thank you. I just wanted to confirm with those who hadn't already shared that works, that they are able to do that. And I apologize for the inconvenience. I'm not going to call people out directly. So if you have a concern about September 24th, you can let me know now, or offline, that's fine too. Just one quick note about that change date. It will be in room 416, so not in our usual room. And folks can look out on the commission website for the notice of cancellation and the updated meeting page. Anything else about that or other agenda items? Yes, Vice President Parker.
Director Arnst, he mentioned the waiver and then also the election plan. Does that just need to be part of his regular report or separately agendized?
Oh, it will be separately agendized.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay, let's move to public comment.
There are no public commenters.
Okay. Anything else before we adjourn? Okay, the time is now 7:23 p.m. and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
So short and.